The moment I saw Patricia Martinez standing on my driveway with her arms crossed and that pinched expression on her face, I knew my peaceful Saturday morning was about to go straight to hell. I was carrying the third section of my flagpole across the lawn when she appeared, seemingly materializing out of thin air like some kind of suburban nightmare. The sun was barely up, casting long shadows across the neatly manicured lawns of Riverside Meadows, our cookie-cutter subdivision in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I had specifically planned to install the pole early to avoid exactly this kind of confrontation, but apparently, Patricia had radar for anything that might be happening in her precious neighborhood. "Excuse me, Jordan," she called out, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that made my skin crawl. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I set down the pole section carefully and straightened up, wiping sweat from my forehead despite the cool morning air. "Morning, Patricia." "I'm installing a flagpole." Thought that would be pretty obvious. Her eyes narrowed. Patricia was probably in her mid-50s, with severely cut blonde hair that looked like it cost more than my monthly car payment and a wardrobe that screamed, "I need to speak to the manager," from a mile away. As the president of the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association, she took her position with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for Supreme Court justices. "I can see that," she said, stepping closer. Her heels clicked on my concrete driveway, even though it was barely 7 in the morning on a Saturday. Who wears heels at this hour? What I meant was, did you submit the proper paperwork to the HOA board for approval? I took a deep breath, reminding myself that losing my temper before breakfast was never a good idea. "Actually, Patricia, I don't need HOA approval for this. I'm protected under federal law." Her laugh was sharp and brittle. "Oh, really? And what federal law would that be?" "Because I have the HOA covenants right here." She pulled out a tablet from her designer purse, already pulled up to some page of regulations. Section 7, subsection 3, clearly states that any exterior modifications, including but not limited to fences, outbuildings, and decorative structures, must receive written approval from the Architectural Review Committee. A flagpole absolutely falls under that category. "This isn't just a decorative structure," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm active duty Navy, and I'm installing this to display the American flag. The Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005 protects my right to do this." Patricia's face turned an interesting shade of red. "I don't care if you're the president himself. You live in Riverside Meadows, and you agreed to follow our rules when you bought your house. That flagpole is going to be an eyesore, and I will not allow it." "It's not your decision to allow or disallow," I said, feeling my patience starting to fray. "The law is pretty clear on this. We'll see what our attorney has to say about that." She tapped something on her tablet. "Consider this your official warning. If that flagpole goes up without approval, you will be fined $500 per day until it comes down. And if you refuse to pay, we will place a lien on your property." I stared at her in disbelief. "You're threatening to put a lien on my house over a flagpole to fly the American flag. I'm enforcing the rules that everyone else manages to follow just fine," she snapped. "You're not special just because you're in the military. Plenty of people in this neighborhood have served, and they don't go around breaking the rules." That was rich, considering that the plenty of people she was referring to was exactly one retired Air Force colonel who lived 3 streets over and had never installed a flagpole because his wife thought they were tacky. But I bit my tongue. "Look, Patricia, I'm not trying to cause problems. I just want to display the flag at my own home. This is a 20-foot residential flagpole, perfectly reasonable size, and it's going to be installed professionally to code." Then you should have no problem waiting the standard 30 days for the Architectural Review Committee to evaluate your request, she said primly. Submit your paperwork by Monday, and we'll get back to you by the end of next month. Next month? It's October. You want me to wait until mid-November? That's our standard review period. Though between you and me, I can tell you right now that the committee is unlikely to approve. Flagpoles create visual clutter and can be dangerous in high winds. We had a terrible storm just last year that took down the Hendersons' basketball hoop. Can you imagine if a metal pole came crashing down? I took another deep breath. My buddy Marcus, who lived 2 towns over, had warned me about HOA drama when I bought the house last spring. I had thought he was exaggerating. My previous apartment had been blissfully free of busybody neighbors who thought they owned everyone else's property. I'm not going to stop installing it, I said finally. I'm within my legal rights. If you want to fine me, go ahead. I'll see you in court. Patricia's eyes flashed with anger. Oh, you'll definitely be seeing me in court. I promise you that. And it's not just going to be about fines. I'll sue you personally for violating the covenants. By the time our lawyers are done with you, you'll wish you just followed the rules like everyone else. She spun on her heel and marched back toward her house, which was located at the corner of the street with a perfect view of everyone's comings and goings. I watched her go, feeling a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach despite my confident words. My neighbor, Bill Stevens, poked his head over the fence. He was a retired school teacher, pushing 70 but still sharp as a tack. Don't let her get to you, son. She pulled the same thing when the Richardsons wanted to paint their shutters navy blue instead of the approved dark gray. Threatened lawsuits, fines, the whole 9 yards. What happened? I asked. They caved, changed them to gray. Most people do cave eventually. Patricia's got deep pockets and a mean streak. She'll drag you through legal hell just because she can. Well, I'm not caving, I said. I've got the law on my side. Bill nodded slowly. Maybe so, but you might want to get yourself a lawyer anyway. Federal law or not, she's going to make your life miserable. He was right, of course, but I was stubborn and the principle of the thing mattered to me. I had spent the last 8 years serving my country, including 2 deployments in the Middle East. The idea that I couldn't fly my country's flag at my own home because some petty tyrant thought it was an eyesore made my blood boil. I spent the rest of the morning finishing the installation. The company I had hired, Veterans Flag and Pole Service, showed up at 8 with the concrete and equipment. The owner, a former Marine named Tom Rodriguez, had done hundreds of these installations. HOA giving you grief? He asked when I told him about Patricia's visit. How'd you guess? Happens about 70% of the time. You'd be amazed how many people hate the idea of their neighbors flying the flag. Got into it just last month with an HOA president down in Chesapeake. Lady actually called the cops on us, said we were vandalizing the property. Cops showed up, we showed them the federal law, and they basically told her to pound sand. I hope it goes that smoothly for me, I said. You active duty? Yeah, Navy. I'm stationed at Naval Station Norfolk. Tom grinned. Then you're golden. Not only do you have the freedom to display the American Flag Act, but there's also a section in the military installation law that provides additional protections for active duty service members. Trust me, I've dealt with enough of these HOA Karens to know. They threaten, they bluster, they send nasty letters, but in the end, the law is the law. By noon, the flagpole was installed and the concrete was setting. It was a beautiful piece of work, a 20-foot brushed aluminum pole with a gold ball top and proper hardware. Tom helped me attach the flag, and we raised it together as Bill watched from his yard, standing at attention with his hand over his heart. The flag caught the breeze perfectly, unfurling against the October sky. I felt a surge of pride watching it wave. This was what it was all about. This was why I served. Patricia was watching too, I noticed. She was standing in her front yard with her phone pointed at my house, obviously taking pictures or video, probably documenting evidence for her lawsuit. Let her. I had nothing to hide. The next few days were quiet, and I started to hope that maybe Patricia had backed down after thinking it over. That hope died on Wednesday when I got home from base to find a certified letter taped to my front door. The letter was from Riverside Meadows HOA, signed by Patricia Martinez as president. It was formal, written in that peculiar legal language that manages to be both verbose and threatening. The gist was simple. I was in violation of Section 7, subsection 3 of the covenants. I was being fined $500 per day starting from the date of installation, Saturday, October 4th. The fines would continue until the flagpole was removed or I received proper approval. I had 10 days to appeal the decision to the board. Below that, in a separate paragraph, it mentioned that failure to pay the fines would result in a lien being placed on my property and potential foreclosure proceedings. I sat down on my front steps and read the letter 3 times, feeling my anger build with each reading. Foreclosure. Over a flagpole. This was insane. I pulled out my phone and called the base legal office. I had been putting off getting legal advice, hoping I could handle this myself, but clearly, this was escalating beyond a simple neighborly dispute. The Judge Advocate General's office at Norfolk was busy, but they squeezed me in for an appointment the next morning. I took leave from my duties and drove over to meet with Lieutenant Commander Sarah Phillips, a Navy lawyer who specialized in service member rights. She listened to my story with a patient expression, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and folded her hands. Okay, so first, the good news. You're absolutely protected under federal law. The Freedom to Display the American Flag Act specifically prohibits HOAs from preventing service members and civilians from displaying the flag, subject to reasonable restrictions. A 20-foot residential flagpole is well within reasonable parameters. And the bad news? I asked. The bad news is that HOAs don't always care what federal law says. They have their own lawyers, their own budgets, and sometimes they'll push these cases just to prove a point. It's cheaper for most people to back down than to fight, even when they're in the right. I'm not backing down, I said. She smiled. Good, because there's something your HOA president probably doesn't know about. You mentioned your active duty stationed at Norfolk. That's right. Then you're also protected under the Service Members Civil Relief Act, which provides additional protections against civil actions for active duty military. But more importantly, there's a provision under Title 10 of the U.S. Code that relates to military installations and the rights of service members to display military insignia, which includes the flag. Virginia also has state laws protecting flag display. She pulled out a thick binder and flipped through it, finding a specific page. Here. This is the section you want. It basically says that any residential property restriction that interferes with a service member's right to display the flag is void and unenforceable. The HOA can't fine you, can't place a lien, and certainly can't foreclose. Relief washed over me. So what do I do? I'm going to draft a letter for you to send to the HOA. It'll cite all the relevant laws and make it crystal clear that their actions are not only unenforceable but potentially illegal. If they continue to harass you, they could face federal penalties. That usually makes HOAs back down pretty quick. And if they don't, then we escalate. The Navy takes care of its own, Jordan. If this HOA wants to mess with an active duty service member over displaying the American flag, they're going to find themselves in a world of hurt. I left the legal office feeling better than I had in days. Lieutenant Commander Phillips promised to have the letter ready by Friday and said she would personally sign it on behalf of the base legal office. That would carry more weight than just me sending something on my own. When I got home that evening, there was another surprise waiting for me. Patricia had apparently decided that legal letters weren't enough. There was a notice posted on my door, on the neighborhood Facebook page, and apparently hand-delivered to every house on my street. It was an official announcement about an emergency HOA meeting scheduled for Saturday at the community center to discuss ongoing covenant violations and the importance of maintaining neighborhood standards. I wasn't specifically named, but it was pretty obvious what the meeting was really about. The notice mentioned that repeated violations could result in legal action against homeowners, and that it was everyone's responsibility to maintain property values by adhering to the rules. My phone buzzed with a text from Bill. "You see Patricia's little announcement. She's really got it out for you." "Yeah, I saw it," I texted back. "I'm not worried. I've got a lawyer now." "Good. You're going to need one. FYI, she's been going door to door trying to drum up support, telling everyone your flagpole is going to tank property values and set a bad precedent." That was frustrating but not surprising. Patricia was nothing if not thorough in her campaigns. I decided to do some reconnaissance of my own. I spent Friday evening walking around the neighborhood, knocking on doors and talking to my neighbors. Most people were polite but non-committal. A few, like Bill, were openly supportive. But I was surprised by how many people seemed genuinely concerned that my flagpole was somehow going to hurt their property values. "It's not that I don't support the flag," said Jennifer Morrison, who lived 4 houses down. "But Patricia showed me the comps, and homes in neighborhoods with strict HOA enforcement really do sell for more. I'm planning to move in a couple years, and I can't afford to lose equity over something like this." "It's a flagpole," I said, trying not to sound defensive. "It's not a pink flamingo or a rusted car on blocks. It's the American flag." I know. And thank you for your service, really. But you have to understand, we all signed the covenants when we bought here. If everyone just starts doing whatever they want, where does it end?" I had versions of this conversation with about a dozen people. By the time I got home, I was exhausted and discouraged. Patricia had done a good job of framing this as being about property values and rule of law rather than what it really was: a petty power trip. The letter from Lieutenant Commander Phillips arrived via email on Friday night. It was perfect, professionally worded but unmistakably firm. It laid out the relevant federal laws, cited specific code sections, and made it very clear that any fines, liens, or other actions against me would be considered void and potentially subject the HOA to penalties. The letter also included a new piece of information that Phillips had dug up. Apparently, the military installation law she had mentioned covered not just the right to display the flag, but also protected service members from discriminatory actions by HOAs. If Patricia continued to target me specifically while allowing other violations to slide, that could be construed as discrimination against military service members. I printed out the letter and made copies. One would go to Patricia via certified mail. Others would go to each member of the HOA board. And I planned to bring several copies to the Saturday meeting. That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I would say at the meeting, imagining different scenarios and arguments. I wasn't naturally confrontational, but I was ready to fight for this. Saturday morning dawned cold and overcast, matching my mood. The meeting was scheduled for 10, and I got there 15 minutes early. The community center was a modest building at the entrance to the subdivision, used for various neighborhood events and HOA meetings. When I walked in, Patricia was already there, setting up a projector and arranging chairs. She gave me a cold look. "I hope you're here to announce that you're removing the flagpole." "Not a chance," I said. "I'm here to participate in the meeting. I am a homeowner in this neighborhood after all." "Yes. Well, we'll see how you feel after the board makes its position clear." Other residents started trickling in around 9:45. By 10, there were about 30 people present, which was actually a good turnout for an HOA meeting. Most faces were familiar from my door-knocking campaign. I saw Bill give me an encouraging nod from the back row. Patricia called the meeting to order at 10 sharp. She was in her element, standing at the front of the room with a laser pointer and a PowerPoint presentation already loaded on the screen. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began. "As you know, we're here to discuss a serious matter affecting our community. Recently, one of our residents has chosen to install a structure without proper authorization from the Architectural Review Committee. This flagpole represents not just a violation of our covenants, but a challenge to the entire system that keeps our neighborhood beautiful and our property values high." She clicked to the next slide, which showed a picture of my house with the flagpole prominently displayed. Several more pictures followed from different angles. As you can see, this is a 20-foot metal pole in the front yard. It's visible from the street and from neighboring properties. While I want to be clear that we all support the flag and appreciate military service, this is about following the rules that we all agreed to. She went on for another 10 minutes, talking about the importance of architectural consistency, the potential safety hazards of tall structures, and the precedent it would set if violations were allowed to stand. She showed graphs about property values and quoted extensively from the covenants. Finally, she paused and looked directly at me. "Jordan, would you like to address the board?" I stood up, holding my copies of the legal letter. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "Thanks, Patricia. Yes, I would like to address the board and everyone here." I walked to the front of the room. "First, I want to hand out copies of this letter from the Judge Advocate General's office at Naval Station, Norfolk." I distributed the copies while Patricia frowned. Several board members started reading immediately, their expressions changing as they absorbed the content. "As you can see," I continued, "I am protected under federal law from HOA restrictions on displaying the American flag. The Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005 specifically prohibits HOAs from preventing flag display. Additionally, as an active duty service member, I have further protections under the Service Members Civil Relief Act and Military Installation Law." "This is the first I'm hearing about any military installation law," Patricia interrupted. "That sounds made up." "It's not made up. It's Title 10 of the U.S. Code, and it's very real. The letter includes citations and relevant code sections. You're welcome to look them up yourself." One of the other board members, a man named Robert Chen, raised his hand. "I've been reading this letter, Patricia. It looks legitimate, and it specifically says that any fines or liens we impose would be void." "Our attorney will determine what's legitimate or not," Patricia snapped. "I'm not about to let some sailor tell me how to run this HOA based on a letter from a military lawyer who probably doesn't know the first thing about property law." "With all due respect," I said, trying to keep calm, "Lieutenant Commander Phillips specializes in service member rights and property law, and this isn't just her opinion. These are federal statutes." Another board member, Margaret Wu, spoke up. "Patricia, maybe we should have our attorney review this before we proceed with any fines or legal action. If Jordan is right and we're violating federal law, the HOA could be liable. We're not violating anything, Patricia said, her voice rising. We're enforcing our covenants, which every single homeowner agreed to. Federal law doesn't just override private contracts. Actually, I said, it does. When federal law and HOA covenants conflict, federal law wins. That's kind of how the Constitution works. A few people in the audience chuckled, which only made Patricia angrier. Her face was turning that interesting shade of red again. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You're not special just because you wear a uniform. You think you can do whatever you want and hide behind some federal law. That's not how it works in the real world. In the real world, federal law is the supreme law of the land," I said. "And in the real world, I have the right to display the American flag at my home. That's not me being special. That's me exercising rights that every American has." "You're being selfish," Patricia shot back. "You're prioritizing your own wants over the good of the community. Everyone else manages to follow the rules. Why can't you?" "Because the rule is illegal," I said. "You can't enforce a rule that violates federal law. And frankly, I think it's pretty disturbing that you're fighting so hard to prevent someone from flying the American flag. Don't you dare question my patriotism," Patricia said, her voice shaking with anger. "I have done more for this community than you ever will. I've dedicated years of my life to keeping this neighborhood beautiful and safe, and I will not let some newcomer with an attitude problem destroy everything we've built." The room had gone very quiet. Even Patricia's usual supporters looked uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. Bill stood up from the back. "Patricia, I think you're out of line. Jordan has every right to fly the flag. My father served in World War II, and he'd be appalled at what you're trying to do here." "Sit down, Bill," Patricia said. "This doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us," Bill replied. "Because today it's Jordan's flagpole. Tomorrow it might be my garden gnome or someone else's paint color. Where does it end? When does this stop being about maintaining standards and start being about you controlling every aspect of our lives?" Several other people murmured in agreement. I could see Patricia losing control of the room, and she knew it too. "Fine," she said abruptly. "We'll table this discussion until our attorney can review the matter. But I want to be clear, Jordan, that this is not over, not by a long shot. You may think you've won, but you haven't. I will fight this to the Supreme Court if I have to." "That's your choice," I said, "but you're going to lose. And you're going to waste a lot of the HOA's money in the process." The meeting broke up shortly after that, with no formal vote or resolution. People filed out in small groups, some stopping to shake my hand or offer support, others avoiding eye contact. Patricia gathered her materials in tight-lipped silence and left without speaking to anyone. Robert Chen approached me as I was heading out. "Hey, Jordan, just wanted to say I think you're right about this. I'm going to push the board to drop the matter. Patricia is stubborn, but she's not stupid. Once our lawyer tells her the same thing your lawyer said, she'll have to back down." "I hope you're right," I said. "I am. But fair warning, she's going to make your life hell in other ways. She's vindictive like that. Suddenly your grass will be too long or your trash cans will be out too early. Just be ready for that." He was right to warn me. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 3 more violation notices from the HOA. One claimed my grass was exceeding the maximum allowed height of 4 inches. I went out with a ruler and measured it at 3.5 inches. Another said my mailbox needed repainting due to visible wear. I had literally painted it 2 months earlier. The third claimed I had parked my car on the street overnight, which was prohibited. I had security camera footage showing my car in my driveway all night. Each violation came with a $50 fine, and a demand for immediate compliance. Each one I responded to with photographic evidence proving the violation was false, along with a reminder that harassing an active duty service member could constitute discrimination. The flagpole remained standing, and my flag flew every day. I made a point of properly raising it each morning and lowering it each evening, illuminating it at night per proper flag etiquette. If Patricia wanted to make this about respect for the flag, I was going to be the most respectful flag flyer in Virginia Beach. The harassment continued into November. Patricia seemed determined to find something, anything, she could use against me. She filed a complaint with the city about my fence height, which turned out to be well within code. She reported my dog to animal control for excessive barking. The officer who came out was apologetic and told me my dog was one of the quietest he had encountered that day. She even tried to get me ticketed for having a commercial vehicle in my driveway, claiming my truck counted because it had a toolbox in the bed. Each frivolous complaint was documented. I kept a detailed log of every interaction, every letter, every violation notice. Lieutenant Commander Phillips had advised me to keep records in case we needed to pursue a harassment claim. Then, in mid-November, things escalated. I came home from base on a Tuesday afternoon to find my flag lying in the yard, torn from the pole. The clips that held it had been deliberately cut, and the flag itself was dirty and torn. The rope that ran up the flagpole had been damaged as well, frayed in a way that looked intentional rather than natural. I stood there staring at the damaged flag, feeling a wave of anger so intense I had to take several deep breaths to calm down. This wasn't just about the HOA dispute anymore. This was vandalism. This was destruction of the flag. This was personal. I carefully picked up the flag, treating it with respect despite its condition. Then I called the police. The Virginia Beach Police Department sent Officer David Thompson, a patient man in his 40s who took detailed notes as I explained the situation. I showed him my security camera footage, which clearly showed a figure approaching my house around 3 in the morning and doing something near the flagpole. The video quality wasn't good enough to identify who it was, but the person was wearing what looked like a hoodie and moved with deliberate purpose. "You have any suspects in mind?" Officer Thompson asked. "I have a suspicion," I said carefully. "I'm in a dispute with the HOA president. She's been harassing me about the flagpole since I installed it. Patricia Martinez." I blinked in surprise. "You know her?" Officer Thompson's expression remained neutral, but I caught a flicker of recognition. "Let's just say this isn't the first complaint we've received related to her." But suspicion isn't proof. Unless you have evidence directly connecting her to this vandalism, there's not much we can do. What about the security footage? Like you said, it doesn't show a face. Could be anyone in a hoodie. "I'll file a report, and if you get any more specific evidence, give us a call. In the meantime, you might want to upgrade your security system." After he left, I reviewed all my security footage more carefully. I had cameras covering the front and sides of my house, but the angles weren't great for the flagpole location. However, I noticed something interesting. About 10 minutes before the person appeared at my flagpole, a car had driven slowly past my house. The headlights were off, which was unusual. The car paused briefly across the street, then continued on. I couldn't make out the make or model clearly, but I did catch a partial license plate. It was worth a shot. I also decided to take Officer Thompson's advice and upgrade my security system. I ordered better cameras with night vision and motion sensors, along with a spotlight that would activate if anyone approached the flagpole area. The next day, I took the damaged flag to a proper disposal ceremony at the Norfolk base. It hurt to see it go, but treating it with dignity felt important. Then I bought a new flag, even better quality than the first one, and installed it along with my upgraded security system. I also filed a formal complaint with the HOA board about the harassment and vandalism, with copies of all the false violation notices and the police report. I sent copies to every board member individually and demanded an investigation into Patricia's conduct. The response came 3 days later, but not from the HOA board. Instead, I received a letter from a law firm representing the Riverside Meadows HOA. The letter informed me that the HOA was proceeding with legal action against me for covenant violations. Despite my claims of federal protection, the HOA's attorneys believed they had grounds to enforce the architectural restrictions. The letter demanded I remove the flagpole within 30 days or face a lawsuit. I forwarded the letter to Lieutenant Commander Phillips, who responded within an hour. They're bluffing. No attorney with half a brain would actually take this to court given the laws involved, but if they want to push it, we're ready. She drafted a response that was significantly less polite than her first letter. It pointed out that the HOA was now engaged in what appeared to be a pattern of harassment against an active duty service member, including potentially orchestrating or enabling vandalism of federal property, which is what the flag technically was. The letter suggested that if the HOA continued its actions, we would not only defend against any lawsuit but would countersue for harassment, discrimination, and violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. The stakes were getting higher, and I was starting to worry about the toll this was taking on my life. I found myself constantly checking my security cameras, stressed about what Patricia might do next. My work performance at the base hadn't suffered yet, but I could feel the distraction. Then, just before Thanksgiving, I got my break. Bill called me early one morning, his voice excited. "Jordan, you need to see this. Patricia's husband, Tom, is at my door. He wants to talk to you." I walked over to Bill's house to find Tom Martinez standing in the driveway. Tom was a quiet man who worked in accounting and generally stayed out of his wife's HOA business. He looked tired and nervous. "Jordan," he said when he saw me, "I need to apologize, and I need to tell you something." We went inside Bill's house, and Tom sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "Patricia has been obsessed with your flagpole since you put it up. I told her to let it go, that it wasn't worth the fight, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying it was about principle, about maintaining standards." "Okay," I said slowly. 3 nights ago I woke up and she wasn't in bed. I found her in the garage, and she was washing mud off her shoes and sweatshirt. When I asked her what she was doing, she got defensive and told me to mind my own business. But I got suspicious, so I checked her car. There was a pair of wire cutters in the trunk that I'd never seen before. My heart started beating faster. "Tom, are you saying what I think you're saying?" He nodded miserably. "I think Patricia vandalized your flag. I don't have proof, but the timing matches, and she's been acting strange ever since. Paranoid about her phone and computer. This morning I confronted her about it, and she basically admitted it. Said you were destroying the neighborhood and someone had to take a stand." "Did she actually say she cut down my flag?" "Not in so many words. But yes, that was the implication. She said sometimes people need to be taught a lesson, and that federal law doesn't matter when you're protecting your community." Bill let out a low whistle. "That's confession enough for me." "Tom," I said carefully, "would you be willing to tell this to the police?" He hesitated, and I could see the conflict on his face. This was his wife, after all. But finally he nodded. "Yes, this has gone too far. I love Patricia, but what she's doing is wrong. And honestly, I'm worried about what she might do next. She's not thinking clearly about any of this." We drove to the police station together. where Tom gave a formal statement to Officer Thompson. With Tom's testimony about the wire cutters and Patricia's implied admission, combined with the security footage of someone approaching my flagpole at the right time, the police now had probable cause. That afternoon, 2 officers went to Patricia's house. I wasn't there, but Bill watched from his window and gave me the play-by-play over text. Patricia was arrested and charged with vandalism and destruction of federal property. Tom had consented to a search of the house, where police found the wire cutters matching the damage to my flagpole rope, still with traces of the rope fiber on them. The news spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By evening, the community Facebook page was blowing up with shocked comments and heated arguments. Some people defended Patricia, saying she had just been trying to protect property values and things had gotten out of hand. Others were appalled that the HOA president would commit vandalism over something so petty. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that night without Patricia. I wasn't invited, but Robert Chen called me afterward to update me. The board voted unanimously to drop all legal action against you and to rescind all fines related to the flagpole, he said. We're also going to put the false violation notices in Patricia's file and review our architectural guidelines to make sure they comply with federal law. And Patricia has been asked to resign as president, effective immediately. What if she doesn't resign? I asked. Then we'll start recall proceedings. Either way, she's done. The board can't be associated with this kind of behavior. We could be liable for her actions while she was acting in her capacity as president. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Thanks for letting me know, Robert. No, thank you, for standing up for what was right. A lot of us were uncomfortable with how Patricia ran things, but nobody wanted to rock the boat. You forced the issue, and honestly, the HOA is going to be better for it. Patricia made bail the next day, and I saw her being driven home by Tom. She looked defeated, her usual perfect appearance disheveled. Part of me felt bad for her. She had let a petty dispute spiral completely out of control, and now she was facing criminal charges. But mostly, I just felt relief. It was over. The next few weeks were relatively quiet. Patricia did resign from the HOA board, citing personal reasons in her formal letter. The charges against her moved forward, though her attorney was negotiating a plea deal that would likely result in probation, community service, and restitution. Tom stayed in the house, and I saw him occasionally. We nodded to each other but didn't talk much. I got the impression their marriage was under strain, which was sad but not surprising. The HOA formally updated its architectural guidelines to explicitly allow flagpoles for displaying the American flag, in compliance with federal law. They also adopted new procedures for handling disputes and imposed term limits on board positions to prevent any one person from accumulating too much power. Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it with some buddies from the base, grateful for good friends and the fact that my flagpole drama had finally ended. In early December, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Patricia, handwritten on plain paper. "Jordan," it began, "I owe you an apology. What I did was wrong, and there's no excuse for it. I let my pride and my need to control things get the better of me. I convinced myself that I was protecting the neighborhood, but really, I was just being petty and vindictive. I'm sorry for the harassment, for the false violation notices, and especially for damaging your flag. That was unforgivable. I hope someday you can forgive me, though I understand if you can't. I'm getting help for my issues, and I'm trying to be a better person. Thank you for your service to our country, and I'm sorry I didn't respect that from the beginning. Sincerely, Patricia Martinez." I read the letter several times. It seemed genuine, and I appreciated the apology. I didn't respond, though. Some things didn't need a response. The apology was enough. Christmas season arrived, and I decorated my house with lights and a wreath on the door. No violation notices appeared. The new HOA board president, Margaret Wu, was friendly and reasonable. The neighborhood felt more relaxed without Patricia's constant surveillance and enforcement. On Christmas morning, I stood in my front yard in the cold air, watching my flag wave in the breeze. It was a clear, beautiful day. Bill came out of his house and walked over, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Merry Christmas," he said, handing me one. "Merry Christmas, Bill." We stood there in comfortable silence, drinking our coffee and watching the flag. After a while, Bill spoke. "You know, I've lived in this neighborhood for 12 years, watched a lot of people come and go, seen the HOA go through different leadership. But I've never seen anyone stand up to them quite like you did." "I just wanted to fly my flag," I said. "You did more than that. You reminded people what's actually important. It's not about whether every house looks exactly the same or whether everyone's grass is exactly the same height. It's about being good neighbors and respecting each other's rights." "I hope the neighborhood can move forward now," I said. "Put all this drama behind us." "I think it will, thanks to you." We finished our coffee, and Bill headed back to his house to open presents with his grandkids who were visiting. I went inside my own house, feeling at peace for the first time in months. The legal proceedings against Patricia concluded in January. She pleaded guilty to vandalism and was sentenced to 1 year of probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for the damaged flag and my security system upgrades. She also had to attend anger management counseling. I saw her once more after that, in early February. I was checking my mailbox when she pulled up in her car. She rolled down the window. "Jordan, I just wanted you to know that Tom and I are moving. We're selling the house and relocating to North Carolina to be closer to my sister. Fresh start and all that." "I hope it works out for you," I said, and I meant it. "Me too. And for what it's worth, your flagpole looks really nice. I was wrong about it being an eyesore. It's actually kind of nice seeing the flag there every day." "Thanks, Patricia." She drove away, and I never saw her again. Their house sold in March to a young couple with a baby. They seemed nice, and they certainly didn't care about my flagpole. Life settled into a comfortable routine. My deployments continued with the Navy, but whenever I was home, I made sure my flag was properly displayed and maintained. Other neighbors started putting up their own flags, inspired by the whole saga. By summer, there were 5 American flags flying on my street alone. The HOA never bothered me again about any violations, real or imagined. Margaret Wu turned out to be an excellent board president, focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. They repaved some roads, updated the playground equipment at the community center, and organized neighborhood events that people actually enjoyed. One evening in late spring, I was doing yard work when a car pulled up. A man in his 60s got out, wearing a Navy veteran cap. "Excuse me," he said. "I hope I'm not bothering you. I'm David Coleman. I live over on Maple Street. I just wanted to shake your hand and say thank you." "Thank you for what?" I asked, shaking his hand. "For standing up to the HOA about your flagpole. I'm retired Navy, 30 years of service. When I moved here 5 years ago, I wanted to put up a flag, but Patricia told me it would be a violation. I was tired from fighting bureaucracy my whole career, so I just let it go. But you didn't let it go, and now I've got my own flag flying. So thank you." "You're welcome," I said, genuinely touched. "And thank you for your service." "Right back at you, son. Right back at you." He left, and I went back to my yard work, thinking about how strange life could be. I had moved to Riverside Meadows looking for a quiet place to live between deployments. Instead, I had ended up in a months-long battle with an HOA president over a flagpole. But in the end, it had worked out. The flag was flying, the neighborhood was better off, and I had learned something about standing up for principles even when it's difficult. That summer, the neighborhood held a 4th of July celebration at the community center. There was a barbecue, games for kids, and a short ceremony honoring local veterans. I was asked to speak, which made me nervous, but I agreed. Standing in front of my neighbors, some of whom had supported me and some who hadn't during the flagpole dispute, I kept my remarks brief. "I'm not great at speeches," I began, "but I want to say something about what happened last fall. When I put up my flagpole, I didn't expect it to become such a big deal. I just wanted to honor my country and my service. What followed was difficult and stressful, but it taught me something important. Our rights, even ones that seem small like the right to fly a flag, matter. They matter because they represent bigger principles: freedom, respect, the rule of law. And sometimes defending those rights requires standing up to people who have power over us, whether that's a government or a homeowners association." People chuckled at that. I'm grateful to everyone who supported me during that time, and I'm grateful that our community learned from what happened and made positive changes. That's what America is about. We mess up sometimes, but we learn and we do better. So thank you all, and happy 4th of July. The applause was warm and genuine. Afterward, dozens of people came up to chat, share their own HOA horror stories, or just say thank you. It felt good to be part of a community again, rather than at war with it. As the sun set and fireworks began over the nearby beach, I stood with a group of neighbors, including Bill, David Coleman, and several others. We watched the explosions of color light up the sky, and I thought about everything that had happened since that October morning when Patricia first confronted me about my flagpole. It had been exhausting and frustrating, but it had also been worth it. My flag still flew every single day, a reminder that some things are worth fighting for. And I had helped make my neighborhood a little bit better, a little bit more respectful of people's rights, and a little bit less tyrannical. That night, walking back to my house after the celebration, I paused to look at my flagpole one more time. The flag was illuminated by the spotlight, waving gently in the evening breeze. It looked exactly right, exactly as it should be. I thought about Patricia and hoped she was doing okay in North Carolina. I thought about Tom and hoped their marriage had survived. I thought about all the small battles people fight every day against petty tyrants and unreasonable rules, and I felt grateful. Grateful for my service, grateful for the laws that protected my rights, grateful for the neighbors who had supported me, and grateful for the resilience of communities to grow and change. The flagpole still stands today. Every morning when I'm home, I raise the flag. Every evening I lower it. I maintain it carefully, replacing the flag when it shows wear, checking the pole for any issues, making sure everything is done properly and respectfully. Some of the neighbors' kids have started asking me about flag etiquette, and I've been teaching them the proper way to handle and display the flag. It's become an unofficial neighborhood tradition. On holidays, we now have a little ceremony where the kids help raise the flag together. The HOA has transformed under new leadership. They still maintain standards, but reasonably and with respect for individual rights. Property values have actually gone up since Patricia left, disproving her dire predictions about the flagpole being an eyesore that would tank everyone's equity. Last month, I got promoted to lieutenant, and my Navy career continues to progress. I'm proud of my service, and I'm proud that I stood up for my right to display the flag. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I wondered if it was worth the stress and conflict. But every time I look at that flag waving in the breeze, I know it was worth it. Some principles are bigger than convenience or avoiding confrontation. Some rights are important enough to defend, even against seemingly overwhelming opposition. Patricia learned that lesson the hard way, through criminal charges and public humiliation. I learned it too, but in a better way through standing firm on solid ground and trusting in the law and my own convictions. The whole experience changed how I think about communities and about the balance between individual rights and collective rules. Both matter, but rights come first. Rules are only legitimate when they respect the fundamental freedoms that make us American. My flagpole stands as a symbol of that principle. It's not just a pole with fabric on it. It's a reminder that we all have rights worth defending, that laws exist to protect individuals from overreach, and that sometimes one person standing up can make a difference. The neighborhood understands that now. Even people who initially sided with Patricia have come around. They've seen that the sky didn't fall when I kept my flagpole up. Property values didn't collapse. The neighborhood didn't descend into chaos. Life just went on, but with a little more freedom and a little less petty tyranny. Looking back on everything that happened, I wouldn't change a thing. Well, maybe I would have installed better security cameras from the start. But the core experience, the fight to defend my rights, that was valuable. It made me a stronger person and made my neighborhood a better place. And every day my flag flies proudly, a symbol of the country I serve and the principles I defended. It reminds me why I wear the uniform, why I took an oath to defend the Constitution, and why those words matter not just on some abstract national level but right here in my own neighborhood. Patricia thought she could intimidate me into backing down. She thought that her position, her lawyers, and her willingness to fight dirty would be enough. She was wrong. Federal law protected me, military installation law backed me up, and in the end, justice prevailed. The American flag still waves over my front yard in Riverside Meadows, Virginia Beach, Virginia. And it always will for as long as I live here. That's not a threat or a challenge. It's just a simple statement of fact. Some things are worth fighting for. The flag is one of them. Freedom is one of them. And standing up to bullies, whether they wear uniforms or HOA president name tags, is definitely one of them. That's my story about how HOA Karen threatened to sue me over my flagpole and learned I was protected under military installation law. It's a story with a simple lesson. Know your rights, stand your ground, and never let anyone tell you that you can't honor your country at your own home. The flag still flies. Justice was served. And life in Riverside Meadows goes on better than before.